Okay, next question. I guess so. Another one from Ernesto. Does the NLI constitution address the issue of disincentivizing the rise of special interest and explicitly outlaw rent-seeking? Furthermore, how are those interests incentivized to redistribute those opportunity costs for production of the commons? So me and Curt already prepared some answers. I like to say that under our system you could still seek rents, you just won't find them. As for special interests, all of us technically have some special interests. The problem is imposing on a populace that doesn't share them and didn't vote for them. We solve this by concurrent democracy, where separate interest groups actually have to agree on anything that affects them all through houses of government. Plus, there's no imposition on states on the federal level beyond strategic necessities. Furthermore, if the special interests in question are outright hostile to Americans, or whoever we're talking about, the special interest groups need to be deported and never to be allowed back.
Yeah, that wasn't very subtle, that last one, Martin. So that's Martin saying the positiva. In the positiva, it's very hard to enact a rent seeking under our law. I was going to take the other one, which is I was going to say the courts, is that we had during the civil rights era. So you got to think of it this way: we had the common law government, and then the rise of managerial government. Managerial government happened around the turn of the century, right? It was sponsored by the influence the communists had, how rapidly they could industrialize because of it, and they're partly because of what we learned by going and fighting in Germany in World War I and learning how exceptional German bureaucracy government was. And before that, once we knew that, we went and looked back and looked at Prussian government, which is a fucking art form. So really, and the reason I think we took the wrong lesson from that, in that the whole point of the Prussian one is that it was you had to go into the military and then become competent and work your way up. It was not a clerisy. And so it was the bureaucracy was very German, very dutiful, very common good. And that's part of German mentality, which I find so fucking wonderful. So we brought that back, and it didn't work here. It didn't work here because America is set up to develop clientelism, which you still see if a party takes over the government, they go and replace the heads of all the bureaucracies, right? Clientele. And who do they put in charge? Political favorites, right? So America's had a very hard time escaping clientelism. Somebody else argued with me yesterday, someone said, well, why did men vote for Wilson? Well, at the time, we're trying to get rid of Tammany Hall and all the other crap with Democratic corruption. So somebody who was actually educated, was from a skilled class, and had actually a plan, seemed very good, but still he was elected with 48% of the vote, meaning that 52% of the men didn't vote for him. In other words, it was a field of four candidates, and he was elected like Clinton was because there were other candidates that diluted the votes that he could be elected. So when you come into the post-war era, where we built the managerial state, then the military-industrial complex, at which point Eisenhower hires my great uncle or whatever he was to go through and say, how bad is this military-industrial complex thing? He's like, it's pretty bad, but we can fix it. So then we roll into the 60s, and what's happened is the combination of the Vietnam War and Eastern European post-war Jewish immigration and their activism in the sciences captured the academy because the academy switched from loyalty to credentials. And so you could get people into the academy who were not part of the managerial, exactly nobility or upper classes. And so what happened is we proletarianized and partly foreignized our academy in the 1950s, which is what happens which comes to fruition with the anti-war movement, the feminist movement, the civil rights movement and the attempt to overthrow, and the successful attempt at overthrowing our immigration policies. So, I mean, small things in large numbers have vast consequences. That change in our policy, which the Academy did that because I'm sorry, I skipped a step. The Academy changed this credentialist issue because technology during the Second World War had become such a competitive advantage that we wanted to produce the largest number of engineers. We didn't get them. What we got was these freaking activists. And so since that time in the 60s, activists have been in control of our government, not loyalists. Is that a cat's tail that just went in front of the camera?
No, it's a fly, and I'm muting myself trying to get rid of it, and it's not working.
So we had this crisis happen in the 60s, and really that's what went wrong, right? It took us till about 2012 to fix the pseudoscience, and it was only 2018 where we got the racial pseudoscience out and back into race differences. So you had IQ by the 2000s, you had sex differences by 2012, you had race differences by 2018, and so we've only recently overthrown the science, and it still hasn't worked its way through the academic system. And maybe it can't. Maybe we have to purge it.
No, it's an ideology. To anyone who looked, it was obvious that it's wrong all along.
Right. Well, but they're not. This is the problem with you let anybody into the academy, and you teach them this nonsense, right? Especially if they're women, you're going to get this behavior. So the one that happened during the 60s was they were successful at getting the military out of government. And so once you lost you lost the loyalty in the academy, bringing people in the government, and then you lost the military out. Now you've got a purely credentialed class that's purely parasitic. So, I mean, what's happened here isn't novel. It's not like we're discovering this at all. This is fairly well recognized issue, but there's too much influence to keep feminizing and hyper consuming the polity. Anyway, I forgot the topic that we were talking about.
I'll read the question again. Does the NLI Constitution address the issue of disincentivizing the rise of special interest and explicitly of rent seeking? Furthermore, how are these interests incentivized to redistribute these opportunities?
So March of the positive, I've said the negative. So what we've done is we've produced the law with enough precision. Okay, thanks Noah for participating. Love you, brother. Have a great day. Is that we produced the law with enough precision so that instead of this extremely difficult class action lawsuit thing, which came about in the 60s, right? Because that's when it came about. Class action came about so that they could take action against the government and against industry. But it's still too expensive for individuals to act. So basically you only organizations would throw a lot of money into something can cause lawfare. Right? So what we've done is reduce the cost of that to basically zero and changed it over to loser pays. So if you accuse somebody falsely, it could be harmful for you. But conversely, you can defend the commons against anybody in the society. Can defend the commons against any intrusion, any imposition of cost. So there's nobody safe in the government, nobody's safe in the media, nobody's safe in the academy, nobody's safe anywhere from advocating basically what's criminal behavior. And so we've vastly empowered the ability of the individual to use the courts to correct any attempt, or before it gains momentum, any attempt to start this kind of corruption before it gains momentum. So it should be extremely difficult because we specifically outlawed rent seeking, all its forms. And you'll see that in the rights, obligations, and alienations. We specifically outlawed all those forms of rent seeking so that it's basically rewarding to you to catch somebody at it and prosecute them. And I think that'll work fine, right? I mean, we've restored accountability. One of the examples is we all have about the mortgage crisis, right? But what if you had made every single person from the admin who who prepares the papers up to the owner of the company liable for misrepresentation, in financialization. Well, I mean, they'd be a hell of a lot more careful about what they're doing. Well, it's the same thing. It's like holding people accountable for a chain of evidence. It's the same thing. So we've just vastly increased the power of the individual to use the courts to police the system instead of believing the system can police itself, because it can't.
Shall we do the next one?
And I expect 10 years of spurious, ridiculous lawsuits as the public learns what's actually unjust and what's just, what's necessary, what's unnecessary. That's it.
All right.